Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's A-M-P-I-R-E. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. In a minute, I'll be joined by Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post as we preview the Commanders training camp, going through all sorts of different projections, veterans that may be on the bubble, that maybe would never have been on the bubble in the past because of their draft status. Does that matter anymore? No. A lot of talk about Jayden Daniels, the defense, all sorts of things we're looking for in training camp, which of course begins on Wednesday. The veterans report on Tuesday. On Tuesday, I believe we'll be talking to Dan Quinn, maybe Adam Peters. So I'm going to be having another podcast probably Tuesday night / Wednesday morning, getting ready for training camp. And then I will have training camp updates after every practice. So tune in for that. Make sure you come back for all that good stuff as I'll keep you updated on training camp and have guests on throughout. And if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on that, find your level of membership you want, and go from there. For you gold members, I will be doing a lot of private Zooms this summer and throughout the season. And I'm going to be trying to get as many guests on there, hopefully getting another guest on there at least once a month or so. So anyway, that's all the good stuff. I will say, and again, the one last thing is that for ESPN, all the ESPN NFL Nation reporters had to do a training camp preview. All that stuff is going to run, I believe, on Tuesday. So check back for that. It has, big storylines. Training camp will be a success and then also 53-man roster projections, which to me was very, very difficult this year. There's going to be some tough calls for a couple of reasons. One, because you have a new regime. Two, you have former high draft picks that, guys like Fedarian Mathis, could he be in trouble? What has he shown in the first 2 years that suggests he shouldn't be in trouble with a new regime, right? So, and they also brought in a defensive tackle that spot. So there are a lot of questions at those positions. Then there's some other injury issues that could pop up that affect the 53-man roster that, F.A. Obata, what's his situation like? How is Ricky Stromberg? Is he recovered from his knee injury from last year? That was a tough knee injury. So, where is he at? And so I think there's going to be some of those that play into this roster. Maybe they get kept on, maybe they get put on PUP. We'll see. Anyways, all the PUP stuff will be decided on Tuesday when the players report and they get their physical. So anybody who opens on PUP will find that out later Tuesday afternoon. And I will be doing a podcast after we meet with, I believe, at least Dan Quinn, maybe Adam Peters. So anyways, tune back in for all that. So Nicki and I are going to get into all this good stuff, a lot of training camp preview, vets on the bubble, things that we're watching for, the defense. We're talking a lot about the defense. So all that good stuff. So here's my conversation. Oh, by the way, you can follow Nicki on Twitter at Nicki, Nicki Jhabvala, Jhabvala, and read her work on WashingtonPost.com. So here's my conversation with the Washington Post, Nicki Jhabvala. Will Jayden Daniels climb to the top of the NFC East? Will the Commanders zip past the competition? We'll have to wait until the season starts to see, but you can get a head start on the competition this summer at the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring. Named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today, the country's largest ropes course and zipline park is now open 7 days a week. Located in the heart of Montgomery County, Maryland, the Adventure Park offers climbing, ziplining, axe throwing, food, and more. Experience adventure day or night with your family, or leave the kids at home for one of the exclusive Keep It Lit adult-only events. These summer date nights are perfect, featuring glow lights, music, fire pits, and endless adventure. With challenges anywhere from beginner to expert, there is something for all skill levels. Not looking to scramble through the trees? Keep your feet planted in the pocket and throw a perfect spiral at axe throwing. You can throw at traditional targets or play any number of interactive games. You can even upload your own image. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. The best climbing, ziplining, and axe throwing in the country right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/Kime. Nicki, I had you on here for one reason, and he's that little fella right there.
So much.
There you go.
I thought he'd be asleep by now, but you can see how successful we've been at the sleeping napping situation. So he's getting his 15 minutes of fame on the John Kime podcast.
Well, 20 minutes of football conversation might put him to sleep. We'll see. And you might know what his future is based on if he gets excited or if he's like, oh God, Jaden Daniels again, left tackle. Oh, snooze. Come on. Let's go. That's kind of what I'm in. For anybody who's not watching, Julian's in the picture. So, and if you want to go watch, you got to go see how cute the kid is. So, and I can attest.
Not that I'm biased or anything.
He's a cute kid. You should post some pictures of him on Instagram.
Oh, I should. I haven't done that in a while, in like a whole hour or something.
There you go. So anyways, good to see Julian. But so as we tape this, there are a few days reporting, but as this airs, it's going to be like reporting the next day.
Right.
What are you going into training camp? What are you most curious, or who or what are you most curious, anxious to see in camp?
Aside from Jaden Daniels?
Well, we can start with Jaden if that's what it is. Because all right, let's start with Jaden there. Then we'll go to who's next.
To me, I will be most interested to see, obviously the left tackle spot, kind of where do things stand there? How do both guys, the rookie Brandon Coleman and the veteran Cornelius Lucas, how do they look there? How are they kind of divvying up the reps? How are they kind of working through that? But honestly, I'm most interested in the defense. I want to see how they're, kind of what their vision is on the back end. They have a lot of new pieces in the secondary, a lot of really talented guys in the secondary. How are they envisioning that? And then the linebacking core, two really, really solid veterans in Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, some good depth guys. How does Jamin Davis fit into the mold? How much has that group as a whole improved? And how does it work with the secondary? Because you've got guys that are extremely versatile, like Louvu. So I've always kind of leaned more defense. I don't know. I like watching defense more, but I think it'll be very interesting this year just to see how Dan Quinn and Joe Witt kind of put their stamp on this group, and how they're envisioning things, because it's, they have, some key returners, obviously Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, but, to me, the bulk of the defense is a blank slate. They're edge rushers, linebackers, secondary. So I'm curious to see how that starts.
And those are kind of key spots too.
Yeah.
So, but I think along those lines, I'm curious to see, like, how do they start to, they're not going to show us everything in training camp, but I am curious to see like the scheme and just what they're asking the line to do as far as pass rushing, the aggressiveness. And, too often in the past, it was, now this would have put Julian to sleep watching this defense, because like, hey, we got 4 guys up front, go get them, fellas. That's what the pass rush plan was. So what does it look like now with this group? And that's, and also like Jamin Davis, does he help them at edge or not?
Yeah. And is he truly playing on the outside, which I would imagine he would. He was in minicamp and OTAs. But, in the previous regime, they talked about it a lot and never fully moved him out there. So, where is he lining up? Can he help? Can we get a glimpse of sort of his status with the team? Because it's, I don't think it's guaranteed really that anybody outside of some clear few guys from the last team make it. So I think you got to go into it like everybody's kind of questionable at this point. So does he have a spot on this team? That to me is a very valid question. And I think we'll find it out pretty soon on.
To that point, and I was going to ask you about that, about like vets on the bubble, right? And that could be anybody from the previous regime outside of a couple guys. And I think Davis would be chief among them, right? Fedarian Mathis.
Fedarian Mathis,
him on there,
especially with, never mind Johnny Newton's status, but the fact that they did draft a really good pass rusher, that high interior pass rusher, I think you have to wonder, what is Phil Math's status? The fact that he's dealt with so many injuries and, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would still be a little surprised if they moved on from Emmanuel Forbes without fully seeing what he is. I mean, the first round, and these are fully guaranteed contracts, it just, you can't really do that. But, there are some guys on the depth there where, you're not sure how they fit, if they make it, but we'll get some clarity here soon.
Well, and I think it's also, for me, it's like, you're going to ignore where these guys are picked. Like, ignore the fact that Mathers is a second round pick. Don't keep him because of that. Keep him because you think he can help you, because this is the 1 year you get that free pass for all these kind of moves. In the future, you're cutting a second round pick in the future that was yours. Not good. You're cutting a second round guy from the past. It's acceptable. This is their free pass year, right?
Right. No, totally. So,
and but it is like, and I don't know what Mathis does. And I think you put anybody from there, like, who would you say Terry, Duran, and John Allen, and Cosme. Yeah. There was a handful.
I mean,
Brian Robinson.
Andrew Wiley, unless some stud veteran comes available after roster cuts, but that's more of contractual reasons. It doesn't make sense to cut him now, and you need somebody to play right tackle. Right. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a limited few. Dotson, but I mean, and receiver, I mean, I'm segueing for you. You're welcome. I mean, that's another group where it's pretty open outside of the couple, 2, maybe 3 guys. I feel like almost every year in camp, they go in not fully knowing, how are those last receiver spots going to be filled out. This year more so. And how the new kickoff rule plays into that, how they envision that returner spot could also factor into the number of receivers. So yeah, I think there's quite a bit of competition in this camp for Washington, quite a bit.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be some great team this year because of that, but there is those bottom roster spots, and when Quinn was in Atlanta, they always kept 6 receivers. So I figure there's that. Which is Jamison Crowder for sure on there. I know they like his leadership in the special teams room. That matters, but you still got to show it on the field. And, is De'Ami Brown, we've been waiting for more production from him, but he's got that speed still, and you don't have a lot of depth. That helps him, and then how good is McCaffrey? So I think there's, is there anybody beyond those 6 who's really ready to threaten to earn a spot? Do you think, we saw Tinsley, Tremaine, and Kaz Allen, any of those guys? Do
I feel like they're kind of all in that same group, but fighting for the remaining few spots there. I mean, Zacchaeus, he's another one. I mean, just, a veteran. I think has a solid chance, but without seeing him in camp, without anything really, it's hard to know if he's a step above some of these other guys that were from the previous regime or otherwise, but this is just my belief going in. I mean, not everybody agrees, obviously, but I still feel like the top 3 going in, and this isn't necessarily based on the first 2 are obvious, but I still would put Luke McCaffrey at number 3, not because he's the 3rd best receiver necessarily, but because they drafted him in the 3rd round. I know you shouldn't always do that, but the fact of the matter is this regime drafted him in the 3rd round, which is higher than probably other teams might have. So if I feel like he makes the roster, because I don't think he's not going to go waivers. So I don't think that's a question, but I would put him in the top 3 right now.
And he's a guy that I'm really intrigued to see. And that was part of it going in too. What does this rookie class look like? Because those are the building blocks. This class is the building blocks for the future. And I think so, like if he goes in there and looks like he can play, that's a big W for them. But yeah, and I don't know, like, has De'Ami Brown really shown enough that he should be figured as the third guy? I don't think so. Now, as a blocker in the, for the run game, he's always done pretty well, but you got to do more. And so
Right.
Zacchaeus, like they do have ties to him. So anybody that they've signed that they have ties to kind of give the edge to. And he's one of them. But yeah, I mean, with McCaffrey, I'll be curious to see like what are the little things that he's still adjusting to at that position that maybe, how does that manifest itself? But also like
Right.
Jahan, I mean, this is a huge year for Jahan.
Huge year for Jahan. Huge year.
Yeah.
Like I don't necessarily think he needs to worry about his spot, but he needs to worry about proving himself to this coaching staff and frankly the league. So I think myself included, so many people were pretty high on him going into last year. I really thought he was going to have a monster year because he started to come on as a rookie. He really showed where he excels as a receiver. I think his route running is superb. I think he can create separation with the best of them. But he had a number of drops and it was just an off year for him. And he knows that. I mean, he's told us that like he was just not happy with his performance at all. So, it's a big year for him.
I think a big key for him is getting off the line of scrimmage, because when he would face press, it's different. And that's right. A challenge for every single receiver in the NFL. Can you beat that? Because if he can get you with that, he's quick enough at the top of the routes to then create a lot more space. And that's where he excels, but he's got to show, can he do that consistently, or can they move him around enough to offset that? Because he can be a weapon. We saw that the second part of his rookie year, he was really good in that. Right. And so but yeah, he's one. And, but is the other part is then obviously offensive line with Coleman and can he do it? And again, we have no evidence from the spring whether he can or he can't. It's because there's
he's just a mystery at this point. It's hard to really get a good gauge on the offensive linemen, the guys in the trenches and the backs without pads on. It's hard to, they may look good on paper, which is awesome, fine, but until you put the pads on, you don't really know what you have. I also think, and we've talked about this, about how, the joint practice with the Ravens last year really started to poke holes in what we thought were solid positions on this team last year in camp. Like the secondary looks solid when going against their own offense. You put them against another offense, oh dear. So I think having 2 joint practices should be good. I don't think it can hurt. I think it should help them. By the way, speaking of like the receivers and like you're talking about getting off the line, have you watched the Netflix?
I haven't watched it yet. Haven't watched it yet.
I mean, you can turn on any highlight of Devontae Adams, and I mean, his releases are just insane. But you just realize like how otherworldly his releases are. It's just insane, and it just made me think of, like, I was thinking back to like Terry working on that a couple of years ago, like really emphasizing that, and like how some guys just make it the quickness at the line and just every detail of their route is just so important. You see that in a lot of veterans like Terry, Jahan, and some of the younger guys really start to learn that, if they're smart, really start to learn how important those details are.
And I think like for Jahan, it's the hands, because when I'd watch him last year and you motion to a stack where there was the D-backs then have to play a certain way, he can win with his feet. But but he's got to start winning more with his hands in those situations. And I think he knows that. And I remember talking to Bobby Ingram about this, just, like he hadn't had to do that as much before.
Right.
So I think it's still something that's a little bit new for him, but that's where it's going to be key, because if you can do that, now you make yourself a better receiver, because you can only, like, at some point, just like with any receiver, any left tackle, you can protect a left tackle, but at some point you got to win one-on-one against a pass rusher. So, the same thing with a receiver. At some point you've got to win that, but it is like watching guys like Devontae Adams and just the footwork, because you don't know where they're going and they're good with their hands. So you can get them with your feet, and you just have more, as Terry says, tools in your bag. And that's one thing I've always respected about Terry is, like every year we ask him, because we know, right? What did you do in the offseason to get better? And in the spring, he talked about yards after the catch.
Right.
And I think it was Dan Quinn was talking about like how he noticed him doing things in practice that would simulate that. Like that's how you go from a 3rd round pick to a multi-year 1,000-yard receiver.
Right.
You know? So
there's a plan behind everything. There's intention with everything. I mean, you see it with bets. You see it with Bobby Wagner too, which I yet another reason why I think he's a huge pickup for this team is just to have more examples in all 3 phases of guys that do this.
Right.
I think at times that was missing.
Oh, for sure. What's your confidence level in those vets to be able to help this year? What are you looking for them this summer to see what they can do?
I'd say it's pretty high. You know, the bar was set pretty low. I hate to be totally disparaging to the, whatever.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, like it's hard to deny what Bobby Wagner does on the field. You can't question it. The guy's gonna be like a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, what he does works and he's detailed and he's sort of built a career not only on his success on the field, but his longevity in being that successful. I mean, the guy is still really freaking good in, however many years it's been. And he understands the value of sort of paying it forward to the younger guys. I mean, I think that's pretty well documented. And I think, there's sort of a ripple effect. Guys feed off that. I think Frankie Louvu could be another, though he firmly believes he is not an old head, that he's still a young guy at year 7. But he's a type that, by example, is sort of a sponge out there. And I think having sort of that humility to still understand that there's plenty of room to improve and have a willingness to ask others. I think you see that with Terry and, young guys like McCaffrey. I think they're sort of the same mold where they're, they don't feel like they have everything figured out. So yeah, I like Chin on the back end. I think that was another good pickup. Zach Ertz on offense. I think Eckler maybe. But I also wouldn't discount what Brian Robinson has already been through and learned at this point. I think he's, been through more than most on and off the field, unfortunately. So I do. I think they have these veterans scattered, which is great. It's paramount to a successful team, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think like Robinson and Eckler can complement one another too.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You don't want Eckler carrying the ball 15 to 20 times a game.
No.
And you're not going to have, so there's a role for both of them. But, so I think that makes a big difference. Ertz, to me, it's just about health. Can he, I'm expecting a good camp from him. I'm expecting a good start from him. Can he sustain that? Because the last couple of years, you get up there, you have a couple of injury years. That's where the questions will come for him. But, I think that'll be, to me, an interesting thing to watch in camp, how that part unfolds and like how they're using guys as well. Right. And so, what are for Jaden? Or I know I'm going to go back to that too, because you brought up McCaffrey and the certain mindset. I mean, he was the one guy who's coming in with Jaden.
Right.
5:45. Yeah.
Totally. And I think Jaden's of the similar mold. Like somebody told me, like for the ESPYs, right?
I know exactly where you're going.
You know the story. So you've been told how, he's from the LA area. He's been working out there again. ESPYs out there. So, he gets his award and he drives out there that night, walks off stage, gets right in his car to leave because he has training. So, which I mean, isn't the norm to like bask in your award, go to parties afterward, enjoy the moment, whatever. I mean, and to each his own. I'm not saying any of that's wrong, but his mindset was, I got to get back to training. This is just an interruption, which, how could any fan or GM not love hearing that? So
I would say anybody listening to this or watching this is going to like hearing that, because he had to be nudged to go get the award because he didn't want to miss any training time. So that's, and so like that is a big thing. And that's the mindset. Like, haven't always seen that here with some of the high profile young fellas. So,
Yes.
that's one thing I would say. So, but what are your expectations for him this summer? What, and
I
you
think
think he's going to win the job?
don't get me started. But I think it will still be a thing. I mean, he will start. We know this. Like, come on, like reason through it, people. He's also like the best quarterback on the field. So there shouldn't be any question whether he's a vet or a rookie or otherwise. But I think the team, and we've talked about this, how they are cognizant of sort of the outside pressures for any rookie, especially one as high profile as he is, and at that position, which is a pressure cooker anywhere in DC, where they've generally sucked for the better part of 2 to 3 decades. Like, it's an important job, and they know that. So I think they're not going to outright declare him a starter. Why they even need to, I don't know, but whatever. Okay, fine. We'll play this little game. But I don't think they're going to declare it, and they're not going to treat him as a true starter in terms of the media, in terms of all that, until, late preseason when, So I think they want to send the message that you still got to earn this. But I don't think he's the type to ever feel offended by that. I think he would expect that. And I think that's just going to be the way it is. Like, he's, yes, the job, we all know it's his, but I think he'll look really good in camp. I do. Now, I don't think it'll reach the level of hyperbole that we've heard throughout minicamp and OTAs, like he's the greatest gift to quarterbacking since, whatever. But, we're not a single ball has hit the ground. Like, stop.
I've heard you say that before.
Yeah. But I think he'll look good. And I think there will be plenty of reason for optimism. I think there will still be bumps along the road, as there always are with rookies. Even the greatest rookies, even the greatest quarterbacks of all time had bumps along the road in their rookie seasons. But I think he's got the complete package, the mindset, the physical traits, the work ethic, and just the natural talent.
I agree. Like, that's kind of what I'm expecting from him, is a good camp. And, to me, by the end of the spring, I mean, in the spring, he was the best quarterback there. And so I don't like
close, and they weren't even doing anything. They were still very clear,
right. And I do think, like, they're not going to be pushed into a decision. And because last year I think they felt like they got pushed into having to make an announcement on Sam Howell, maybe before they want to, but I don't think this group will certainly not be nudged that way. I think Dan Quinn and these guys have been pretty good at being firm on, this is what we're doing. This is when, we'll tell you when we tell you. We're not going to be pushed into, we're not going to rush into it. I think that's kind of the mindset, which is fine. Like, you shouldn't be pushed to it. If you're not ready, if you want to wait till 3 preseason games, fine. Like, we still know he's going to be the guy.
Right. But also, like, if your team, like, if you're letting outside voices push you into anything, then there's a bigger problem there. But
correct. Correct. That's a whole other discussion. Yeah. But yes. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. And I do think it's good for them to say, like, hey, if you're going to be true to competition, you have to be true to the competition. And I think that's what they're going to do. So, but then the last thing, like, what constitutes a good camp for these guys, do you think?
I want to see them look comfortable out there. There was never a point last year where they looked comfortable. There was always sort of that underlying tension with a certain play caller in the offense. It never really felt like the defense had a firm grasp on what they were being taught. I want to see these guys look comfortable and playing fast. And then I want to see, like, when they do make mistakes, do they make them twice? Do you see the same things come up? Do you see the same errant throws, the same misreads, I think a lot of what we have to keep in mind just as spectators is that we may not always know exactly what we're seeing. Like, an errant throw might not truly be the fault of the quarterback, though that's our knee-jerk reaction, is to blame the guy throwing it. So I think there needs to be some more nuance to more context around what we're seeing and interpreting. But that's generally what I would like to see from him. Just a more cohesive group, a guy that looks like a team that looks like it's being developed and well taught.
Right.
Where you don't have a lot of looks like I have no idea what I'm doing, or you see guys that don't even know where to line up, or, eliminate sort of the silly mistakes.
Well, and like last year, because last year it was all about playing fast, but I didn't always feel like it was a crisp fast, right?
Right. It was playing fast at, the expense of detail.
Right. Because there were definitely times where they'd get yelled at to either they're not doing this or that or this. Never heard any of that, and they looked they were playing at a better tempo or practicing a better tempo this past spring.
Yeah.
Does that continue? Because that, to your point, that's a sign of them learning and getting what they're doing. And for sure, there are going to be a lot of speed bumps. I mean, I still we'll talk about this later in camp, but you're not going into the season thinking like, oh my God, they're going to challenge for the division. Like they've got to show improvement. They've got to show that they have a good foundation to build on to finally build something sustainable for the future. So, I think that'll be a big thing. And how do you think Brandon Ayuk is going to fit in?
Oh my God.
So I had to wait for that one. I wanted to end on that.
You were sitting on that one. I know you were. You were sitting on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is like the good thing is, Nicki, it's fine. It's here. I get tired of speculation. Like this guy, could do this, could do that. Well, let's freaking see it. I get tired of the talk, but unfortunately with this team, it's like, usually it's 7 months of talk because they're done early and all that. But let's see if. But
listen, the bar is set very low. I will take Brandon Ayuk speculation. I will take
for sure
ridiculous stories about Topgolf. I will take any of that over multiple federal and NFL-led investigations into misconduct. So
for sure,
so far, Kime.
Listen, a year ago,
it's a new era.
Yes, a year ago at this time, we're just getting back from Minnesota.
Yes,
after the sale, and that was the first thing, but you knew there was still going to be the remnants of it. And now,
wait, did you tell the people? Can I break this to them? Breaking news on the John Kime podcast? John Kime went on vacation. Real vacation.
A real vacation. It was, you heard
it here first.
But the hard part is you're so trained to anticipate what's going to happen, or that you've got this mindset
I know
there's all this stuff that I think it might be another year. I had a good vacation, I'm not going to lie, but I think there's still the remnants of that, the PTSD from a
sort of the aftershocks.
Yes. The PTSD is wrong. Yeah. But anyways. So anyway, Nicki, thanks a lot. And I'm glad that Julian is doing well. So
he's pretty great. Do you want to add anything to the conversation? No, he just would like bottle sooner rather than later. So.
How's that 3-cone drill time?
He's getting faster, it's not quite up to our standards yet, but he has explosive hips, he's low to the ground, he's a high ceiling guy, if you know what I mean.
Tell him to use his height to his advantage. There you go. All right, Nicki, thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Nicki for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode, either, like I said, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and then again after every practice throughout training camp. Talk to you next time.